Petro Chico Boy! Petro Chico Boy is here after my chicharrones!
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Retrospective. Today on this installment, I'd like to introduce Raul from Fallout New Vegas, my favorite companion character from my favorite video game. I've seen videos on Raul before, but this, like my Duncan video last time, will be a reflection and really a retrospective of who Raul was and what he meant to me and possibly all of you. Anyway, let's get right into the video, guys. Like last time, I will start with Raul's story and background, and then I will go on to how he comes into our player character's life, and finally, onto why I even chose Raul in the first place, what makes him special, and my personal thoughts on how he has impacted everyone. Raul has a pretty long background, so sit tight, I promise it's worth it. Although he never tells us exactly how old he is in game, from what we can gather and what the lore implicates, Raul Alfonso Tejada was born in 2047 at Hidalgo Ranch, just outside of Mexico City. Raul's exact age was about 30 years old at the start of the Great War, and 234 years old at the start of New Vegas. In his youth before the war, Raul lived on his family's ranch of 3 generations, honing his skills as a mechanic and a gunslinger. The latter caused him to get in trouble from time to time, but he was no murderer, and his family always tried their best to keep him in line. When the war began and the bombs started to fall, the family ranch was far enough away from the worst of it that it survived. Raul and his family tried everything they could to help people, but people kept flooding into the tiny little ranch, and everyone was so desperate for help and supplies. When supplies started running low, Raul's father had to start turning people away, but things got violent really fast, and Raul and his father had to drive them off. But it didn't last long. When night came, 24 men came and burned the entire ranch down. The men had barred all the exits, but Raul and one of his little sisters, Rafaela, had escaped and ran. Raul's 2 brothers, 2 sisters, grandparents, and his parents all died in the blaze. They were pursued by a few of the men, but Raul took care of them and decided to keep running and hiding in order to keep his last remaining family members safe. After everything that had happened, Raul knew they couldn't keep hiding in the same area, especially after the people who attacked them put a bounty out for him. Although Rafaela was fearful of how bad everything was, Raul convinced her to go with him to Mexico City after he promised her to go see the vaqueros. But they'd soon find there were no vaqueros, and Mexico City was radioactive rubble, filled with death and destruction. Desperate to survive, they began scavenging while trying to avoid newly formed raider gangs and deal with the beginning of Raul's ghoulification process. One day, Raul stumbled upon an untouched vaquero outfit in a novelty costume shop while scavenging. He wore it back to camp, and it made his little sister laugh for the first time since before the war. He decided to start wearing it all the time because it made her so happy. But because he was so noticeable, he became sort of a vigilante, a legend, and he became known and feared as the Ghost of Mexico City. Raul continued to drive off trouble, and his legend continued to grow. He became confident enough to create and protect a small safe haven for himself and Rafaela in Mexico City, but this wouldn't last long either. As Raul's ghoulification process from radiation poisoning was getting worse, he soon fell so ill he could no longer scavenge. Rafaela decided to go out herself to start scavenging, and one day, while scavenging, she never came back, and Raul went to go find her. When he found her, the raider tribes had gotten to her and mutilated her so badly he could barely recognize her. And in a frenzy, Raul went back to the market where he found her and killed every single one of the raiders. After Rafaela died, Raul felt shame and regret for everything that had happened. He hung up his guns and got rid of the vaquero outfit because he felt the glory had gotten to his head and caused the death of his little sister. He found an old Petro Chico refinery and an old jumpsuit with Miguel written on it and he tried to disappear for a while with a new name and a new face. He found himself in Tucson, or Tucson as it's called in the Fallout universe, and settled down in a little repair shop as a mechanic for a while. It was good for a while, according to him, and he got to reflect on his life for a good 75 years, according to the lore. One day, Raul saw a woman get a job at his local brothel. He introduced himself and noticed she looked exactly like his little sister. Her name was Claudia. Although he couldn't bring himself to stay close, he decided to watch from afar and protect her in his own way. But like many things in Raul's story, things went south. Arizona was filled with raiders and tribals before Caesar's Legion assimilated Arizona into the territory, and a small raider band led by Dirty Dave and his 6 brothers rolled into Tucson, looking for supplies and most likely trouble. In an attempt to appease the raiders, Raul sold some ammo and some supplies to the group, hoping they would just move on. But like most raiders' nature, chaos ensued. The town was attacked, and the brothel was ransacked. Raul took up his guns once again, but he was too late. Multiple people were injured, 4 of the girls were assaulted and murdered, and Claudia was taken captive. Although the raiders had a head start, Raul did not rest until he caught up with them, but he would be again too late, and he would only avenge Claudia like his sister. Not the younger man he used to be, Raul was badly wounded in the shootout and just laid on the ground for a while, thinking about his life. He did eventually drag himself back into the town, but that was it for him. Raul had had enough, and this is where we begin to see him start coming into frame in our time. This is when Raul made his way to New Vegas. After a long and troubled life, Raul built a little shack near the Strip to get away from it all. He frequented the Black Mountain radio station, and is exactly why we find poor Raul trapped at Black Mountain, held captive by Nightkin and super mutants. Raul, being the kind old soul he was, noticed the radio went silent one day and decided to make the trek to Black Mountain to see what he could do. The rest is pretty self-explanatory up until when we find him, and he even tells the story as such. He goes to help the big super mutants. They realize his worth and how powerless he is compared to like 10 of them, and bam, he's locked in a tiny utility closet with a locked password set to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But we come along and save Raul from his captivity, and we start our journey with him. And although he calls us a veritable geyser of curiosity, he is actually quite the veritable geyser of information, if we're being honest here. Raul has a lot of dialogue options, and you can ask him a lot of questions, and he is very forthcoming and tells you exactly what you need to know. That's why I say he is a veritable geyser of information. And as we explore the wastes and continue our journey with Raul, and we introduce him to characters like Loyal, Corporal Sterling, or Ranger Andy, he starts to tell us a little bit about himself and tell his true story. Raul's end is all dependent on the player character's decisions. He has multiple endings, but I think the best ones are where he settles down as a mechanic, or he sticks by the courier's side and takes up his guns and is basically the courier's right hand. Personally, the latter is my favorite. But there is one bad option, and I believe that is the only option, is if you don't really do anything with Raul, or you make bad decisions as a character in general and just kind of neglect Raul and just free him and don't do anything with him. So why Raul? What's so special about him, other than having a good repair skill and being quick with a .44 Magnum? We all face getting older, and these days, I believe we sometimes view older people as second-class citizens. And that's part of the reason why I chose him specifically. Because once we start to talk to Raul and get to know him while we play this game, we realize Raul feels as if he is useless due to him being old. As we progress through his story, we have to prove to him that he's still a useful person. He still has a purpose in life. Whether the player character decides he sticks to being a mechanic or he puts the Vaquero outfit back on, Raul does have a purpose. He's not useless. In addition to Raul being a hilarious person, he's also pretty wise and intelligent in his 234 years of life. A lot of his jokes and quips he always has are great, but there's definitely some knowledge behind them. When he's talking about House or the Legion or the NCR or just about anything else, his reality and indifference about the situation is remarkable, and people should honestly take a page from his book. The NCR, the Legion, the House, he realizes all of their successes, their failures, and he commends them for sticking around for so long. And he even has quite the opinion if the player character ends up eliminating one of them. That's not support for those people, though. He just has knowledge from past governments, cities, civilizations, tribes, and he just has the common knowledge of what happens when things go wrong. Raul was the definition of a good guy, and all he tried to do in his life was keep his head on straight and do the right thing, like his family wanted. But I think that's why his story is so tragic. He's no superhero, and he could only do so much as one man could. But it was always never enough, and we meet him full of shame and regret because of that. Fallout New Vegas is my favorite game of all time. I honestly binged an entire playthrough for the millionth time just for this video, and I noticed every time I restart, no matter how difficult it is in the beginning, one of the first things I do is get Raul and play through his story and listen to him tell it. Whether it's his occasional jokes, almost bringing me to tears with his story, or making me second guess my actions, I pick Raul every time over Boone, Veronica, Cass, or just about anyone else. Because I believe after everything, Raul deserves a happy ending. Raul is by far my favorite companion, and I hope by the end of this video you guys are like, damn, Raul is the homie. Even if you've never played the game or even picked him. Honestly, if it were up to me, Raul and I would take over Vegas together with Yes Man, the Securitrons, the Brotherhood, and the Boomers. But hey, that's just me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I try to have at least one random video out a day, but that's about it, guys. See ya.